Good evening, everybody. I want to thank everybody for coming out today to our August 2nd regular meeting of High Point City Council. Before we begin, I'd like to ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Before we get into our agenda, we'll have a couple of well, there's one recognition, and we have an update on our strategic plan. I'd like to begin the recognition period by recognizing our fire chief. Is he here? There he is. Chief Reed, would you come forward? So my understanding is that our fire department has been awarded accredited status. And I'll give us some information on that.
So we got our initial accreditation in 2016, and every 5 years you have to reapply, go through all the steps, make sure you're still meeting everything and so forth. So we did, and so we were awarded another 5-year stint. And so what it does is it gives us data, tells us where we are, how we're performing, the service that we're delivering. It looks at every facet, even into the facets of parts of the city, as far as finance, HR, all aspects of the city. So we do very good. And so actually being a Class 1 rated fire department, we're one of, there's only 290 departments in the United States that are Class 1 accredited agencies. So we're one of those. So we feel honored, and we appreciate all the support that y'all give us, because obviously we couldn't do it without the support of the council and the manager's office. So we thank y'all very much for the support.
Thank you very much, Chief. I think it's a great thing. The accreditation is through the Center for Public Safety Excellence. So it means that we have a great fire department, one that holds itself to the highest possible standards. And I guess I can speak for everybody when I say I think y'all do a great job, and we're happy to support you and are willing to support you to give you whatever you need to get your job done.
I like to hear that.
That doesn't mean your salary's going up.
Madam Manager, did you hear that?
Yeah. He was talking about his buildings.
That's right. But I'll open the floor to anybody who'd like to speak to the chief, but it's a great honor and a great accomplishment, and you're to be commended, you and all of your staff, for helping to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move now to our strategic plan update. For that, Councilmember Williams will update us on our blight reduction strategy, and Councilmember Michael Holmes on our marketing and branding initiative.
Thank you, Mayor. It feels like I just did this, but that's just how the ball rolls. Code enforcement activity for the month of July. During this period, the LCE staff processed 25 new minimum housing complaints, 120 new public nuisance complaints, and collected over 217 signs. Additionally, during the month of July, the LCE staff recorded 19 zoning complaints. A total of 209 public nuisance cases were abated, 51 by the city and 158 by the owners. Two inspections did work on Saturday. Two inspectors did work on Saturday during the month of July and collected 121 signs. 3 properties with ordinance passed are in the appeal period currently. Demolition bids will be requested when the appeal period has expired. 7 properties are awaiting asbestos inspection and demolition bids. There are 2 housing cases with the ordinance passed for demolition, waiting for repairs to be completed at 337 Wingo and 216 Underhill. 2 inspector positions remain open and interviews are underway. Also, during the period, there were 515 total active cases, 219 active minimum housing cases, 185 active public nuisance cases, and 111 active zoning cases. Now I'll turn the floor over to Lori for an update.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. This, again, I know, talking with Chris earlier, these two, he said, we just did it. I said, I know. I said, it gets to be a lot. But we have another house that was repaired, so I'm always pleased to bring those. This is a house at 807 Cliffside that we had under inspection. And I did not have a lot of pictures, or none of the interior. I have some pictures from public nuisance cases that we had that just show, and that's the back deck, is what it's supposed to be. And then that's just a side view of the house. Just to give you an idea, we started the case in May of 2019. We held a hearing and issued an order, and as is customary, it seems, here in the last year and a half or so, especially with the COVID, people are selling their, actually, it's probably the last 4 years, but a lot more often here in the last year and a half. People are selling their properties because I guess they think they can flip it. So they sold it in July of 2019. Then the owner started making repairs, but they did not have their proper permits, so building inspections put a stop work order up. In February of 2020, he finally came in and made payment on his permit, so it was issued. And then June of 2021, he completed the repairs. The property was sold in July of 2021 and is going to be owner occupied. And this is what the house looks like now, and it's really cute.
Job.
Yeah.
And that's all.
Thank you, Lori.
What street was that on?
Cliffside, 807 Cliffside.
That is excellent news. Thank you. Mayor, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Holmes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Strategic Marketing and Branding Task Force met last week for our July meeting. In that meeting, staff presented us with a preliminary RFP for the acquisition of an external firm to lead our marketing and branding effort. There was some great input by the task force, and staff is now going back to incorporate some of those ideas into the RFP. The next step will be finalizing that and then sending it to the task force and to council, and expected release for accepting bids will be October. So we're approaching a time where we're actually going to be having bids come in for external vendors to lead our marketing efforts. So great job by staff and the task force overall.
Councilman Holmes, do we have any information that can be shared, I guess, in regards to what's going out in that RFP, like specifically what we're getting them to do, or the outcomes of that?
It's primarily around place branding. So we're looking at really the branding effort, looking at how our logos and some of our standards that we currently have need to be updated, and how that integrates into the use for the entire business community. So how we see this effort is that it's a well of resources. So if Market Authority wants to integrate a campaign, a strategic campaign for an issue, they can pull from these resources. If any other of the business entities in the city needs resources, they can pull from this. So we're looking at the entire scope of our branding and effort for the city.
Any marketing in there?
So we're looking at the branding side of it first, and then marketing staff seems to have an idea that they will be able to handle the marketing side of that in-house. So.
Will we get an update on that too?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. That's all I have.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the public comment period. The public comment period occurs at our first meeting each month. Anyone who'd like to speak can come forward and to the podium, please. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and I ask that you give us your name and your address when you come forward for the record. There are two people who signed the public comment sheet, but if you didn't get a chance to, you'll still have an opportunity to speak. I'll call the first two in order, and then I'll open the floor to anybody else who might want to speak during the public comment period. First person on the list is Paul Seisloff.
Hey, good evening. Appreciate this opportunity. I am Paul Seisloff, live at 210 Turner Place in High Point. And I'm half of a two-part presentation as a follow-up on a conversation that started with council members beginning in 2019. And my part will be to read a cover letter of a proposal that we have to present. And I've got a hard copy to turn into the clerk of both of our presentations. But this is a letter dated July 19, 2021, addressed to the mayor and to members of City Council. As the date draws near for the opening of the City of High Point's new police headquarters at 1730 Westchester Drive, we wish to request confirmation of the naming of the facility as determined in 1997 as O.H. Leak Law Enforcement Center, designated with prominent exterior signage. Further, in pride and celebration of the historical significance and career of this community leader and the City of High Point's proactive leadership in hiring O.H. Leak as a police officer in 1943, we request placement of a plaque at the entrance or in the foyer of the O.H. Leak Law Enforcement Center. And I just have the signatures. Signed by Reverend Angela Roberson, Executive Board, High Point Commemoration for 400 Years of African American History, and also Emily Gallimore, President of the High Point Historical Society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seisloff. Next on the list is Angela Robertson.
I am Angela Robertson. I am at 1452 Cantwell Court in the city of High Point. And as Paul was saying, we had started this conversation back in 2019 and just want to follow up and see if we can get a commitment. Want to note that the law enforcement headquarters was named after Captain Leak in 1997. In 1997, there was an article in the Sunday High Point Enterprise, and it had a piece in there that said milestone. Black law enforcement officers from across the state attended Saturday's ceremony honoring O.H. Leak. Frank Holman and Roscoe Pouncey, retired captains from the Winston-Salem Police Department, told the Enterprise that naming High Point Police Headquarters for a black officer is a milestone. And why would they say that? Because in 1943, the city of High Point hired B. Allen Steele and O.H. Leak as officers of the High Point Police Department, the first African-American police officers to serve in the state of North Carolina. Officer Leak continued to serve with distinction in the Criminal Investigation Division for 32 years, rising to the rank of detective in 1952, lieutenant in 1966, captain in 1971, until his retirement in 1975. Officer Leak was a founding member of the North State Law Enforcement Organization, an association of black officers during segregation. Honors to his service and leadership included, among others, recognition for 30 years of service, High Point Chamber of Commerce, 1973, Officer of the Year, North Carolina Law Enforcement Officer Association, Man of the Year in 1965, and the Carl Chavis YMCA Award in 1965. Lieutenant Leak was selected as a member of the security detail for the presidential inaugurations of Richard M. Nixon in 1969, Lyndon B. Johnson in 1965, and the visit by President John F. Kennedy to UNC Chapel Hill in 1963. He was named Special Counsel to the U.S. Secretary of Defense, serving in Germany as a racial liaison among U.S. troops in 1972. We ask that you name the new headquarters as has already been done in 1997, that name transfer to the new headquarters, because you've done it before, let's do it again.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
Thank you.
I would just ask the staff to communicate with these two folks, and I think the decision's been made.
There is no plans to change the name.
Yeah.
And it will be appropriately marked.
Okay. Did y'all hear that? Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during the public comment period? Okay. Seeing no one, then we will move on with the agenda. And so next will be our Finance Committee items, and for that, I will turn the meeting over to Mayor Pro Tem Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Wagner. Get my mic on here. Finance Committee did meet at a regularly appointed time, and reviewed all agenda items that are presented in front of you and in your packet. So this consent agenda, I will move forward with a favorable motion for approval.
Okay, there's a motion for approval of the Finance Committee items. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Jones. Is there any discussion on any of these items?
Yeah, Mayor Wagner, I got a question. Chairman Moore, under the agenda item for the ARPA resolution, I noticed that we've got to collect the funds. I get that. Can you give clarity around where it says that we're administering the CSLRF funds? I'm assuming that means a portion of the 11 million some plus funds coming in. We're doing some form of administration of these funds. To what amount, to what degree? I see where it says the categories that are allowable, but, I mean, has determination been made? Are we getting more updates and briefings as these funds come about? And can we just get some clarity? I don't know if does today's vote essentially say this $11 million has been spoken for, or what's going on?
Bobby stepped up. My interpretation is that it's getting more defined, but they have not finished their work yet, so it's kind of clear as Oak Hollow Lake at this point. But Bobby's got more.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. So we're still waiting on the Treasury guidance to be final. They're in the interim final rule state. So they've gotten feedback. They're going to craft the final regulations before, and we felt comfortable waiting to present a plan at that point once we know for sure what we can use the money on. Sorry about any confusion about the different acronyms in here. ARPA is just the the large umbrella act that was passed, and then the CSLRF is just the local funds. And so all this resolution is doing is saying that we have applied for and that we've received the money and that we will administer it according to these allowable uses. And then it authorizes the appropriate staff to do that when the time comes. Yeah. We still have to bring a grant project ordinance back to council before we can do anything with these funds.
Thank you for the clarity.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any other comments? I'll just say that only the federal government can have an interim final rule. Yeah. All right. All those in favor of approval of the Finance Committee consent items, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, those items are approved.
That's all, Mayor.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are the Community Development Committee items, and for that, I'll turn the meeting over to Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item up is 2021-325, approval of the delegation of authority to act as a certifying officer. I'll turn the floor over to Greg to give us details.
Mayor and Council, this is simply a housekeeping resolution that delegates the new city manager, Tasha Logan Ford, to certify any grant or grant-related documents that are submitted to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We ask for your approval.
Thank you, Greg. Are there any questions on this matter? In that case, I'll make the motion to approve item 2021-325, approval of delegation of authority.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on this item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
All right, next up is item 2021-326, 2021 urgent repair policies. This is, without me going into it, I won't steal your thunder, Greg. Go right ahead.
All right, this one's pretty easy too. It's another housekeeping type policy. Annually, we have to have the urgent repair program policies and procedures adopted by City Council. That's required by the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. The funds are already included per the 2021-22 annual action plan. So we request that City Council approve the policies as presented.
Thank you, Greg. Is there any questions for staff on this item?
Have there been any major changes to that policy?
No, sir.
Any other questions? In that case, I make the motion to approve item 2021-326, 2021 urgent repair policies.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
All right, next up is one of my favorites, item 2021-332, contract for the 2021-2022 operations inasmuch contract with the Community Housing Solution. I'll turn it over to Greg again.
Okay, we're happy to be back in front of City Council with a request for a contract totaling $200,000 with Community Housing Solutions for the city to fund materials and operational expenses associated with the two Operation Inasmuch events that will take place during the 2021-22 fiscal year. The first event has been scheduled, and that is on Saturday, October 23rd, 2021, and that's in the Macedonia and Pershing Street communities. The date for the spring event has not yet been determined, but we'll let City Council and the public know of that as soon as we can. Just for notation, this is the 10th OAIM event since May of 2016. Volunteers come together and utilize the materials and things that the city provides to do home repair and necessary yard work. Up until this point, we've had 1,067 volunteers, and there's been 132 homeowners assisted. So that's kind of a report of what's taken place in the past. We look forward to that this coming year. $200,000 will be committed from the Core City Redevelopment Fund. So that's the funding source for it.
All right, any questions to staff on this item?
Where is it, I think I know the answer, but is it, we do have a website where you can go and sign up as a volunteer for that, correct?
Yes, but a lot of times you can just go through Mike McNair's department, and they can connect you, because it's usually handled through the Community Housing Solutions group. They're the ones that kind of help organize it, and Mike's department helps to organize the labor.
Okay. Well, if we had a link or something, I could probably get us a bunch of volunteers.
I'll ask about that,
There-
because I'm not sure.
There is a link if you go to our website and then / Operation Inasmuch. There's a way to get contact information there. And then also D. Donaldson at chshousing.org is another contact. Or certainly call our community development office here if you need more information.
Would there be any other advertisement for this besides the letter sent out to the homeowners in the area, and maybe some kind of thing we can put out for the public in
There
general?
will be, but I don't have all the specifics, but we'll be happy to provide those as to what else will go out.
If we can get, even use the city's social media, Jerron could get us a flyer or something, get that out there on social media, I think would be, that's something that we know about because we work here. But, you know, I didn't hear, you don't hear about a lot, so I'd love to try to help use my social media things to get as much volunteerism as possible.
Yeah, we put they send out a flyer. I know they produce one, because I know I copy, cut and paste that thing on all my social media points every time. But yeah, so if any of my colleagues, I invite you to come out to be a part of it. Been a part of it every time except for one. I learned a lot. I am getting older though, so the more they can separate that from the furniture market would help me tremendously. But other than that, it's a great tool to help assist families in High Point.
Well, since Cyril's the youngest, I'll volunteer you to go.
Keep saying he's the youngest.
That's right.
So I'll make the motion to approve item 2021-332 contract with the 2021-2022 Operation Inasmuch contract with the Community Housing Solutions.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
All right, the next item is 2021-333 ordinance, a demolition of a dwelling. I have received some information from staff, and I would like to make the motion to remove this item off the agenda and turn it back over to staff. I think, okay.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to remove this item from the agenda. Is there any comment or questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes.
All right, and the final item is item 2021-334 ordinance, demolition of dwelling at 524 Cross Street, adoption of the ordinance. I'll turn this over to Lori.
Good evening again, Mayor and City Council. We received a complaint for this property originally back in 2017 from the tenant. We did an inspection on January 6th of 2017. The house did not look like this in 2017. Obviously, the owner, they have deconstructed the house as time has gone on. But we held a hearing on November 20th of 2020 with the new property owner. He purchased it in January of 2019. He did appear for the hearing. He stated that he had the money now and is eager to make the repairs. The inspector agreed to grant him time to make the repairs as long as he followed through with the repairs as discussed. Obviously, that has not happened. We issued an order to repair or demolish on March 2nd, 2021 with a compliance date of April 2nd, 2021. The owner did come in 2019 and he applied for his permit, but did not pay for the permit, so it was not actually issued until May 3rd of 2021. And he is delinquent in property taxes in the amount of $484.31 for 2020.
Thank you, Lori. Is there anyone here to present for or against this item? All right, seeing none, I'll make the motion to approve item 2021-334 ordinance, demolition of dwelling at 524 Cross Street.
Okay, there's a motion and there's a second for approval of the ordinance. Is there any discussion?
Just a comment, I hate to see that one go with all that new lumber and the price of lumber today, so I could be used somewhere.
All right. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the ordinance, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
That is all I have, Mayor.
Okay. So next on the agenda are the planning and development items. I'll be handling those. We have one item, which is a continued public hearing of zoning map amendment 21-07. Mr. Shannon, you're recognized. Public hearing on this item is still open, so.
Yes, Mayor, City Council, Herb Shannon, Senior Planner with the Planning and Development Department. And just a quick recap regarding zoning case 21-07. Council held a public hearing on this proposed rezoning at your June public hearing, and it was continued to the night's meeting. The applicant, Classic Dye, is requesting rezoning of 3.4 acres located east of the intersection of Brentwood Street and Gavin Drive, and also lands at the northern terminus of New Street. The applicant's requesting rezoning of those parcels from the current light industrial district to a conditional zoning heavy industrial district to expand their existing facility. Their existing facility is lying just north and west of the zoning site, that area that's zone HI on the map. There's an existing facility there that was built in 1983, and the current heavy industrial zoning on the site is a holdover from the prior zoning ordinances from the 1980s. Staff in the June 21st meeting expressed concern with the proposed expansion of light industrial or heavy industrial zoning in this area. First, the land use plan classified all those lands lying east of Brentwood Street and south of MLK as for light industrial, and except for the applicant's current facility that is HI, everything else along that eastern side of Brentwood Street is zoned for light industrial. Another concern is along the opposite side of this portion of Brentwood Street are several residential neighborhoods. The land use plan classifies that area as low-density residential and medium-density residential, and that's developed with a mixture of single-family and multifamily use. And there are concerns of expanding heavy industrial uses next to this existing neighborhood. The land use and development categories in this area are long-standing, and the expansion of the HI district use in this area is not supported by land use policy. Finally, based upon the description of the current use and the applicant's proposed expansion, staff has classified the current use and their expansion as a minor industrial use, which is a permitted use in a light industrial district. So there is concern on staff's part of rezoning is not required because the current LI district will allow the uses that the applicant is proposing with their expansion. The Planning and Zoning Commission did review this request at their May public hearing, and they recommended denial by a vote of 7-0. Because this request is being forwarded to you with a recommendation of denial from the Planning and Zoning Commission, a 2/3 majority vote from City Council is required for approval. Within your staff report, page 2 of the cover letter is a statement forwarded to you from the Planning and Zoning Commission that Council can use to support denial of this request. If Council desires to approve this request, you would need to include a consistency and reasonableness statement for approval. The only new activity that has occurred since June is Mr. Chris Andrews, our development administrator, had the opportunity to go out and tour the facility with the property owner, and based upon that tour, he had noted that the staff recommendation is to this being a minor manufacturing use where all activity is contained on site. There's no odor, vibration, smoke, or anything leaving the site, and that's a key classification for determining this being a minor manufacturing facility. So we did have an opportunity to tour the facility, but our recommendation of denial remains the same. That's just a quick recap. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
May I?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so yeah, I have a couple of questions. All right. So what they're doing is they're paint and some chemical coatings, correct?
I believe the applicants here, they can get in more detail, but as that is our understanding, they do some processing of paints, chemicals, and so forth. They may be doing some expansion of producing hand sanitizers and so forth.
So
But-
does paints and coating fall under, in the city wording, under heavy industrial or light industrial?
The old ordinance had a laundry list, 400 or 500 uses, and you pick your specific use. The way the new ordinance that's been adopted in 2017, we not only look at your use, we look at how you operate. That would give staff more flexibility in making a determination. They do paints and coating, they do have those activities. They do have some activities that are considered toxic, but we have those same uses in High Point City Hall. We note that, hey, we have cleaning fluids and bug spray and whiteout in our cabinets that are deemed toxic. Just because you have those materials don't make you a heavy industrial use. The way they're operating, where everything is mostly contained indoors, there's no odor leaving the site, there's no smoke leaving the site, there's no vibration leaving the site. All the activity is contained on their site. Thus, they are classified as a minor manufacturing. So we look at how you operate, not just picking a list out of the development ordinance.
So do we have that separated in the paperwork? Because what I saw is a list of heavy industrial and light industrial, and basically it looks like what they're doing now fits into heavy industrial. So I understand both sides, and I've talked to Councilmember Williams because this is his ward, and I understand some concerns on both sides. But my thought, if they spend the $5 million on expansion, and it clearly says in our ordinance that paints and coatings fit in heavy industrial, but now all of a sudden, and then somebody says, oh, wait a minute, you've expanded into light industrial. So because the parcels are right there next to the heavy industrial zoning, and that's the only area, and they're not changing what they're doing, I just don't know why it would not be okay to just change those to heavy industrial, or change the wording in our ordinance to allow paints and coatings to fit into light industrial, so that that they know that they're covered legally.
There
in the
are two
long term.
different issues. The ordinance spells out how you operate is going to dictate how we classify you. The ordinance knows, for example, these type uses could possibly be considered, but that doesn't make them specifically heavy or minor. It's based upon the way they operate. Now, council could always do a text amendment if council wishes to get more granular in the use descriptions, but that's what we try to get away from the previous ordinance. For protection, staff has noted to the applicant they can always request what we call a code confirmation. They provide us detailed use of what they're proposing. We respond back in writing. We do that all the time. And if they want a higher comfort level, we'll be more than happy to do a code confirmation letter with our recommendation, and they have that binding legal document. Once we make that determination, the only way that could change is if someone appeals that determination. But if they desire a higher comfort level, we're more than happy to do a code confirmation to give them that protection if they desire, to make sure that future staff doesn't make a different determination. And that has been offered to the applicant. But staff, they gave us a very detailed letter of the activity. That's part of the zoning package. Based on that, staff as a whole collectively sat down and reviewed that and made the determination, this is a minor manufacturing use. And if they come in tomorrow for site plan approval and building permit, it would be issued. So that was the concern staff had, that the use is determined to be permitted and doesn't require rezoning.
Let me ask a question. If they're asking for heavy industrial zoning, and they're providing conditions to basically say they're going to limit it to the activities that they're currently doing, then what is the harm to the adjacent neighborhoods if their use of the property is not going to change?
Well, number one, it's already permitted, so it doesn't require rezoning. Number two, once council, whether you approve or deny the request, you are setting policy. Staff has concerns that if you expand HI zoning in this area, other property owners or applicants come and say, well, you let them expand, why can't we establish in this area? And there's a concern that setting precedent, because anytime you make a zoning decision one way or another, you're setting policy. And there was a concern of expansion of HI uses due to the proximity of that residential neighborhood across the street.
But if that HI zoning is limited by certain conditions, then it basically comes down, the precedent that would be set would come down to the conditions.
Based upon the conditions they've offered, you would be expanding to include major manufacturing use. Now, you can parse it multiple different ways, but you're expanding major manufacturing, which is not currently permitted in that area. And staff has just.
Well, it is on the piece of property they already have.
It is on that, but no other parcel. And once you set policy for expansion, staff has concerns that you're basically setting a precedent. Even if you do restrict it, you are expanding the intensity of industrial uses in that area. They may not be necessarily going to the full extent of that, but it does open the door for future requests in this area.
But it would be subject to, presumably, if another case came to council and they were asking for HI with conditions, then the council would look at those conditions and determine whether they would fit into the precedent that's been set.
That is correct.
They would say, they could very well say, well, we don't like, it's going to come down to the conditions. The council could say, we don't like the conditions you proposed. So even though it's a major manufacturing use, the conditions that they've presented limit it to what they're currently doing. They're just going to do more of it. Right?
Not necessarily. Once you open the door for major manufacturing, then anyone else that wants to come is going to say, hey, I'm just as intense or less intense as that use. As always, it's a decision for council to make. Staff is just pointing out the concerns that we have in our professional opinion, that you don't need to expand it if it's already allowed.
But if the only major manufacturing use that they're asking for are the ones that are listed in their conditions, aren't they bound by that?
They are bound by that, but future property owners in the area could say, I want to do another manufacturing use, and I'm
But
either
that-
as intense or
And that would
less.
be up to council to approve.
Exactly,
Okay, we're speaking on the same note, just coming from different directions, I think.
yes.
All right.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Chris Andrews, Development Administrator in the Planning Department. Herb touched on this a little bit earlier, but the development ordinance is structured in a way that it lists major manufacturing, minor manufacturing, and there are examples within each of those. What's cited in the conditions that were proposed by the applicant, there's not necessarily just a coatings or just a dye or just a paint major manufacturing use. It is major manufacturing. It doesn't get any more granular. So that's the consideration there. And then there's a separate condition about principal uses under allowing toxic chemicals or substances, pesticides and fertilizers. That is within a completely different use type for warehousing and storage. And frankly, even having visited the site, that description of that use, unless the applicant has something else planned that they haven't either disclosed or described in their letter, that use does not match, is not congruent with what they're currently doing now. So, I mean, staff is certainly supportive of the expansion of classic dye stuffs. It was a tremendous opportunity to see some of the industry that the city has supported here and helps employ so many city residents. But as Herb has said, the expansion of their operation is not contingent upon this rezoning. So Herb touched on the code confirmation. That is something that we've encouraged and can be applied for. The other opportunity for the applicant is to submit a site plan or a construction permit. On both of those items, planning staff reviews the land use. We ask what the land use is on a site plan or on a commercial construction permit. And if staff were to make a determination that actually this use is not allowed, the applicant would have the opportunity to appeal that as well. So there's a couple different opportunities where if staff made a decision that is incongruent with what we've communicated here, they'd have an opportunity to appeal. But nothing on the site at this point merits a heavy industrial use at this point.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for staff? Okay. Would the applicant like to have an opportunity to be heard?
Mayor Wagner, council members, we appreciate your time this evening. I'm Grant Allman, along with my partner, Andy Harris, who's here. We're counsel to the applicant, Classic Dye Stuffs. I also have with us President of the company, Tom Pica, who's available to answer any questions you may have. Wanted to start just by giving you a little bit of background. I know you've familiarized yourself with our case and the company, but Classic has been in business in High Point since 1979. It's a family-owned business. You've heard a little bit about what they do, but they, manufacture a wide range of dyes, paint, coatings, other colorants. If it deals with color, they probably touch it in some capacity. They employ approximately 60 people here in High Point and about 15 other folks nationally and internationally. As you heard from Mr. Shannon, the current site on which they operated, essentially for the last 40 years is a heavy industrial site. The surrounding properties there they have acquired over the course of several years. In the process, they've cleaned up some blighted parcels and structures and improved, really the appearance of that area specifically. When you boil it all down, our application isn't about use. We're not bringing a new use to this neighborhood. As you've heard, we've been here for 40 years. When we held our community meeting, the only response we got from neighbors was positive and supportive of what Classic was planning to do. As you heard from the planning department, they support what we're trying to do. I think where we respectfully disagree is what's required under our development ordinance to bring this project forward. And so we're going to talk about that just a little bit. One of the recommendations that there's been a lot of discussion about is the concept of a confirmation letter, a zoning confirmation letter. From our view, and we've spent, honestly, the past 3 years looking at this issue and considering how to move forward, and have never been able to get comfortable with that process for a couple of reasons that we're going to talk about. The first is that a zoning letter is a snapshot in time. So there, what we would get is what you're doing today with very specific limitations is what is permissible. If we have 10 trucks instead of 5, if we have excess raw materials that weren't anticipated 5 or 10 years down the road, that zoning confirmation letter may not be sufficient. And then the second thing, and I'd like to pass out something for each of you to look at, if I may. I'll just let you pass this down. So what's being passed down the line is a selection from the development ordinance that speaks to what encompasses major manufacturing. And as you've heard in the highlighted language, it specifically refers to paint and coatings, which are large segments of the applicant's business. It doesn't say, it says these are examples of. And I think, and Jay can attest to this, plain language from a legal standpoint matters. And although we can do our best to craft a zoning confirmation letter that addresses all the things we can think about today, although that may bind the city, it does not restrict a third party from raising what's contained in the ordinance as it reads today, as you see in front of you, from challenging what we're doing in the future. And in no way would a zoning confirmation letter protect the applicant from that scenario. So let's talk about some specifics of the project. You've heard some things moving around a little bit, but basically, of course, we all know about what construction costs are, but right now it looks like this is a $5 to $7 million project. For this family-owned company, that's a huge investment, but it's an investment that they want to make in High Point. It's anticipated that plan would happen in 2 to 3 stages if they're to move forward. But initially, there would be a need for 5 jobs. And over those 2 to 3 stages, there'd be a total of 15. And these are jobs that are going to be available and open to the High Point community. I think that concludes my comments unless there's questions of me or the applicant. But just want to thank you for your time and hope you'll support our project.
Go ahead.
It's Councilman Moore. Seems like there's small things here holding back a bigger project. So your anticipation is, did I understand you to say that there's been some stumbling on this for about 3 years? That you've been trying to reconcile something concerning this project or expansion for 3 years?
It's been in the evaluation stage for that period, correct?
Okay. And if you get to go forward with it, your 2 to 3 stages you think would be, I mean, what's your plan? If you started next month, if things go well in the economy, you hope to build out the $5 to $7 million in 5 years, or do you know?
Stop, sure.
Hi, I'm Tom Pica. Yeah, we would try to go ahead as soon as possible.
Okay.
We would do it. We're still trying to figure out the best route to do that, the best designs. Originally we were looking at 80,000 square foot single facility. Now we're probably looking at multiple facilities to do different projects.
Okay. But when we hear from staff that you don't really need this change because what you're wanting to do is already allowed, where am I missing where am I missing the piece that you're having trouble with, Grant?
So I think that's, what's presented to you in the selection of the ordinance. The ordinance says some of the things that you do are major manufacturing activities that require heavy industrial use. And so again, regardless of whether we're able to receive a zoning confirmation letter that speaks to that issue, that again is clearly stated in the ordinance, that does not eliminate a challenge from a third party seeking to enforce the plain language of the ordinance.
So there seems to be some discrepancy between you and staff, who staff says expansion is not dependent on this rezoning. You feel different than that? From a legal standpoint?
We do from a legal standpoint, no question.
Okay.
We've, had some excellent conversations with staff. I think, both of us have worked hard and are reasonable, but we do respectfully disagree with their interpretation.
Okay. And do I understand that, would staff agree also that the neighborhood was notified and the surrounding neighbors did not have a problem?
That is correct. As always, for any zoning application for both the Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council, there are legal ads in the newspaper, and we notify by mail all property owners within 300 feet.
Okay. And Jay and I often kind of kid each other about him being a lawyer, me not. But plain language from a legal standpoint seems kind of oxymoronic to me. Anyway.
It doesn't mean you can't argue about it.
So can I ask, is it simply it's a concern that you have, you don't actually manufacture paint, but you manufacture things that go into paint? So you're concerned that definition may become broad?
Sure, I'll let Mr. Pica speak to that.
Yes, sir. So we make bases for paint. We make bases for wood stains, which they are paints, basically. It's a concentrated paint. We use solvents, in some cases, solvents such as acetone, other, drawing a blank, almost like paint thinner, different solvents of all kinds. We also, our facilities, we're handling a lot of things there, and we're at the stops. We can no longer safely, do the things we want to do. We want to expand. We want to create a new facility. Paints and coatings is one of the areas of our expansion that's growing rapidly. We are also looking at doing more things for food, drug, and cosmetic uses. We have a cosmetic customer, a large cosmetic customer that would like for us to expand. Those also, those are flammable products. One of the facilities we're looking at doing is probably a 30,000 square foot facility, and the other one's maybe anywhere from 50 to 80,000 square foot, but we're probably going to break that up. We've realized that the fire department, just working, trying to help the fire department out if there ever was an issue, that smaller facilities are better, in those kind of situations.
You said currently you've got approximately 50 employees here in High Point, is that correct?
Yes, sir. We have approximately 75 employees in the U.S., and then we have 2 employees outside of the United States. And so we have at Brentwood Street facility, I think it's approximately 40 folks there, another 15 up the street off of Townsend Avenue. And then we have various sales folks throughout the country. And then, as I mentioned, we have a couple of international offices as well.
If, with this expansion, do you anticipate, obviously, as companies will expand, how many more jobs do you anticipate may come from this possible expansion?
Conservatively, right off the bat, 5 employees needed immediately. And then, no doubt, probably 15 at some point, down the line. I would say within 5 years, easily that many folks to operate machinery. And these are not just minimum wage jobs. These are good jobs. We pay full benefits, insurance. We do the whole gamut. So we take care of our people very well. Most of our employees have been with us a long time. We've got, we've got several people that have been there 20 years plus. And, we try to take care of our people.
Can I jump in? Tom and/or our staff, the issue of neighborhood adequate protection, you've been there a long time, and what you do, but what is in place? Is it all internal containment exercises that you do and your processes that help to protect the neighborhood, or are there also exterior type things that you're doing?
Yes, so once we, the way our current facility is, we have fencing in place. There are, neighborhood kids around, and we're definitely want to make sure. Now, that's something that we would do immediately, is improve that fencing. And I'd want it to look nice, and I've kind of joked around, not talking HPU nice, but some nice fencing.
Well, if you get the correct signage, they might help.
But honestly, we want to be in this community. My family is living here, so.
Have you had any accidents in the past that were
OSHA recordables?
Sorry, I don't normally get up and speak very often anymore, so.
Sorry.
No, we haven't had any bad accidents over the years. We've had a few over the years, but minor issues.
Okay, thanks.
This is a question probably for staff. In your assessment, and if I'm not mistaken, you said that their plan didn't rise to the level of heavy industrial. Can you expand on that a little bit, a little clarity on what seems to be the discrepancy between what they're seeing and what you saw?
Certainly. Just to give some perspective on a few things, staff has not seen any sort of site plan. It's been conceptual from the applicant, and so from a use standpoint is really what we're talking about here. Nothing site design and whatnot. I think one of the discrepancies is that within the development ordinance, and I think Mr. Almond passed that out, there's a listing of uses and then some examples of things that could be within those use types. Those, again, are illustrative. They are not, just because you manufacture paint, or may happen to, or just mix paint, the presence of paint on a site or the presence of a certain chemical does not make it a use that requires heavy industrial zoning. And I'll say, having visited the site, yes, you can tell it's industrial use, and there's certainly a lot of materials in their facility. But if you were to stand outside of it, took a tour of the site, if you were to stand back a couple hundred yards, it was indiscernible what was happening within that building, and that really is what the light industrial or minor manufacturing use exemplifies. So from staff standpoint, that's kind of where the disconnect is. The other thing I'll say is in the conditions that were provided by the applicants, if approved, there's not only the light industrial uses or the heavy industrial zoning, but only including light industrial uses. There's also a use that would expand the storage of toxic chemicals, pesticides, and fertilizers. That is a wholesale trade use type. That is not something that is going on at the site now. So these conditions do open up some of the possible uses on the site now.
So the expansion to heavy industrial will require some additional environmental regulations that they would need to meet from DEQ. Have they been consulted about this? Has the owner brought in DEQ to see if there's any issues that would conflict with that?
Councilmember Holmes, I'm not familiar if, at least the zoning does not have any DEQ tie. The applicant may be able to tell you more about any sort of environmental restraints and whatnot on the property, but it doesn't tie into the
Okay.
zoning at this point.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question or two, I guess, for the applicant. Under that subsection 1, under manufacturing, I'm just going through the definition. I've been to your place, so I believe y'all do have bulk materials that are stored outdoors on the site, right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Are those considered unrefined materials?
Yes, we call them crude or raw material.
Okay. Do you do any processing outside, or is that all done inside?
Most of our materials are processed inside, but there have been occasions where if we needed to do something outdoors, we feel that we would like that ability. Mm-hmm. But to this point, very limited outdoor manufacturing.
Okay. Okay, that's my questions. Anyone else have any questions for the staff or the applicant? Okay. Just to keep us moving, I'm gonna make a motion to approve the item.
Second.
And let me say my little consistency statement here. I'm gonna make a motion to approve it and state that that it is consistent with the adopted policy guidance and reasonable in the public interest, because there are other heavy industrial zone properties in the immediate area. There will be adequate screening of adjacent properties, and the conditions given by the applicant limiting their uses under heavy industrial mitigates the impact of the zoning on the adjacent neighborhoods. And do you renew your second?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Second was by Councilman Jones. I would like to state that, I guess in support of the motion, that I think there's this property, this is a company that's been in High Point a long time. It's an original High Point company. I think, Mr. Pick, I think your father started it in a little building back behind the factory. And it's a homegrown company. I think that the neighbors, you know, have been given ample opportunity and don't seem to have any objection. I think the expansion would help us to acquire more jobs in an area of town that really needs the jobs. It's a good piece of property as far as the job that you do and the ability, has good access to Interstate 74. And it's it's a part of town that really needs the jobs right now, and I'm just a believer in supporting our local companies. With that, I'll open the floor for any comments of the council.
If I can make a comment real quick. So based on the information that staff has provided us with, and, you know, and you're going to keep doing exactly what you're doing, and they're saying that you can do that there, I want you to be able to expand in that area, and I want you, so I will be approving this as well, so based on that.
Anyone else have any questions?
I'd just like to say that I will be in support of the motion, and Mr. Peak, I want to thank you and your family. If somebody born and raised in this town, there were at one time hundreds, if not thousands, of companies near here and around here and in here that were very similar to your business model. And we were very foolish for letting them go away. We had a manager's briefing which says recast your city about small-scale manufacturing, which is exactly where you fall, although you serve a big pond. Thank you for fighting a good fight, staying within the borders, and I will be supporting the motion.
Anyone else like to speak? Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just to make sure we're all on the same page, this is a policy that staff has adopted to make sure there are no confusions as far as conditions. At your June meeting, the applicant had handed out revised conditions. I just gave a copy out to the applicant. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page because that's different from what's in your package. And those conditions read, only the following principal uses as permitted in the heavy industrial district shall be permitted, subject to the dimensional requirements of the HI district and the specific conditions listed in this ordinance. A principal use of the heavy industrial district as listed in the principal use table 4.1.9 of the development ordinance that is also permitted in the light industrial district must be permitted in both districts. B, the manufacturing of coating, paints, dyes as authorized under the major manufacturing use type, industrial use category as listed in the principal use table 4.1.9 of the development ordinance. C, the manufacturing of specialty cleaning and sanitizing products as authorized under the toxic chemical or substance, pesticides, and fertilizer use type, industrial use category as listed in principal use table 4.1.9, and the development standard that district standards of the light industrial district shall apply. Just to make sure there's no confusion, because we had some problems in the past where staff is saying one thing, the applicant's saying another. Mr. Alvin, that is the conditions that you're offering, and that is what you have for your motion.
Can you confirm that that's your understanding and those conditions are the ones that we're approving?
We're reviewing those now. We haven't had this discussion with Mr. Shannon prior to.
Yeah, this is what the applicant offered in June, so I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page as to what you're voting on.
We agree.
That's confirmed? Okay.
Just for the record, make sure that's what your motion is for.
That's fine. I love it when everybody gets along. Okay. All right. All right. So, motion's been made to approve this item, and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion passes by a vote of 8-1. Okay. All right. So, thank you, everybody, taking part in that. Okay, we have several items on our general business agenda. There are just some appointments and reappointments, but there are a couple of items that we need to add to the agenda. These were discussed during our special meeting earlier today. So I'll make the motion to, what am I making a motion to do, Joanne, my brain? Suspend the rules. I'm making a motion to suspend the rules to add these two items. One is a resolution to authorize reimbursement agreement with Shamrock PD LLC, and the other one is to enter into a First Amendment to the employment agreement for our new city manager, Tasha Logan Ford. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a seconded by Councilman Williams. Any discussion on the motion to suspend the rules? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. So the first item will be the resolution to authorize reimbursement agreement with Shamrock PD LLC. This is in regard to the construction of a portion of Samet Drive between Penny Road and West Wendover Avenue, and I move for approval.
Second.
Okay. Motion has been seconded by Councilman Hudson. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. The next item is the First Amendment to the employment agreement for our new city manager, Tasha Logan Ford. The only change here is we are inserting the words 457 deferred compensation plan so that she'll have a little more flexibility as far as a 401k match. It won't just be a 401k match. It'll be a 401k or 457 match. We discussed this earlier. This is really just a technical correction. I'll make a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Moore. Any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next on the agenda is the appointment of Karen Gilbert to the Human Relations Commission. That is Councilman Hudson's Ward 4 appointee, and I will let him speak to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Gilbert applied and is ready to get to work. Comes very, very highly recommended, so I'm happy to make a motion to approve her appointment to the Human Relations.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Johnson. Any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the approval of Karen Gilbert to Human Relations Commission, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next two appointments are coming from me. One is the reappointment of the former Mayor Bill Vincini to the Piedmont Triad Airport Authority, effective immediately through April 20th, 2024. I move for approval. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Moore. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next one is the reappointment of Mary Lou Blakeney to the ABC Board. I'm happy to put her forth for reappointment. She's a former councilwoman, excuse me, and has done a good job, and I think enjoys serving on that board. I'll move for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Williams. Any discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. All right, we have some minutes to be approved.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve has been made by Mayor Pro Tem Moore. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Jones. Any discussion or corrections on the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes. Mr. Moore's putting his finger up before.
We had, earlier in our manager's briefing, we found that the fire alarm went off and kind of scared some of us a little bit because we didn't know exactly what was going on, but we did confirm that they were downstairs testing the candles for Randy McCaslin's cake. We want to say happy birthday to Randy, and we appreciate you. And glad you got to spend it with us at a council meeting.
I think we should
It's been
sing.
my pleasure.
I'm sure.
sure
Should we
it's not
sing
the
happy
first.
birthday?
If somebody knows how to sing, y'all
Okay.
start it.
On 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Randy. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out in the minutes.
Lisa's gonna have to type all that out. All right. Is there anything anyone else has to bring for the meeting before we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made to adjourn by Councilman Jones. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Jefferson. Any discussion? Last chance. Okay, all those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, we are now adjourned.